in this video, we are going to take a look of how we can add our own method, custom method in the JPA repository, and how that method will actually that method will get actually translated into an SQL query that's going to get executed towards the DB. So JPA is really powerful for this because it allows us to use the method naming to just follow a standard of a method naming that for us would generate SQL queries. I'm going to open this page right over here, the documentation for Spring, and right here it says the JPA query methods, and it describes various ways that we can use them to create a query with Spring Data JPA. So now, depending on how we name the method, for example, if we name is starting with, starts with, ending with, is containing, not containing, we can actually create pretty powerful queries with just a method name. So here are some examples. For example, find distinct by, find by last name and first name, find by last name or first name. And there's a bunch of things here. Those are all written here in the documentation. For the purposes of our tutorial, I'm going to want to have a method that's going to allow us to find the product by the name. So how would we do that? We first want to specify that we're going to return an optional of a product entity, and then we're going to say find by name. And the name we're going to pass here as an argument, so in this method. So I'm going to say name. What this is going to do, this is going to generate an implementation for us in the background, a query that would find a product entity with the name that was specified right over here. Now there's a bunch of things that we can do. There's a lot of things, a lot of ways of doing that. But let's test this out. So I created a find by name JPA repository method. We're going to go in the service layer and we're going to create a service method that's going to find a product entity by name. So we're going to have a public optional of product entity, and I'm going to say find by name, and it's going to receive a name, and we're going to implement it. So we're going to use the JPA repository. Basically, we're going to use this method that we just created, and I'm going to say optional of product entity, and then I'm going to say product entity optional to equal product JPA repository dot find by name. So as you can see now, we can access that method right there, and we're just going to pass the name that we receive. And now we can do a check. If product entity optional is empty, then we can return an empty optional, or I mean, yeah, like, or in that case we can return the actual optional, but we really don't have to check that because we're not going to be doing any logic. So I can just directly go ahead and return it for now. So I can just say return, and we're returning the actual product entity if it's found, obviously, by that name. So now I can go to the controller and we can have a route. In this case, I'm going to have a get mapping that's going to return a response entity out of a product. But yeah, actually we probably don't want to just return. Now I'm thinking, okay, we don't want to work with the entities in the controller, so I'm going to come back to the service here. And actually we are going to implement it the way that we're implementing them. So I will introduce a local variable here, and I will say product entity optional product entity. And we will do a check. So we will do a check if optional product entity is empty. Then what I'm going to do, then I'm just going to go ahead and return an empty optional, return, and we're not going to be returning the entity. I would go ahead and readjust that. I would return a product, and now we're going to return the basically an empty optional in this case, because oops, not that. We want an empty optional if the optional is empty. Otherwise, I'm just going to copy this implementation from top, and I'm just gonna say okay, and then I'm just gonna say that we're gonna extract the optional, so I'm gonna say product entity found product is gonna be equal to optional product entity dot get, and then basically I'm gonna fill out the response here, and we're gonna return back that update that we're gonna return back the product that was found with that name. But if nothing is found, we're returning an empty optional. That's the important part. So we're returning an empty optional if no product is found with that name. Otherwise, we're building out a response. And now we're gonna go to our controller, and I'm gonna create a get mapping, and the get mapping. Let's in this case the get mapping actually. The get mapping can be technically we can add it as a pad variable, but as a pad variable usually would be ID, so we probably want to add it as a query parameter. And now thinking it, maybe two products are gonna have the same name. Like that can happen. Like this is not a unique thing. So maybe let's maybe have this return a list. Why not? Yeah, let's make it find and then that's gonna be find all by name. So it's gonna have to be find all by name, and let's have it like that. So let's have it return a list in this case. And actually let's keep it. We're gonna add that scenario later. Let's first keep it as an optional. Let's come to the controller. So we're gonna have a get mapping, and the get mapping, I'm gonna add an additional route here that's gonna be named by name. So we're getting a product by name, and this is gonna be a public response entity, and it's gonna return a product and find. I'm gonna say get by name. Okay, and let's send the name as a query parameter. So I'm gonna do a request param here with the name. Let's just keep it as, let's just say product name like that, and it's gonna be of type string product name, just like that. So now we're gonna receive a query parameter product name, and that's the name that we're gonna use to search the DB. So what I'm gonna do right now, I'm gonna do product service dot find by name, and I'm gonna pass the name that we received here. I'm gonna introduce a local variable, optional product, I'm gonna name it, or yeah, optional product or product optional. Let's be consistent with that there. Product optional, and then I'm gonna do a little check. So I'm gonna do this check for is empty, and if it's empty, I'm gonna return the same exception. So if it's empty, I'm gonna return a 404 not found. But if it's not empty, then we can actually return the product. So I can copy also this thing, and actually I can return the product with that name. So now let's test this out. Let's see if it works. I'm gonna go and restart the application. We're gonna go in Postman, and we're gonna try to return a product. Okay. Now let's first fetch all the products. Okay, we have only one product. Now let's add a product. Let's add a product with test name here. Let's go ahead and fetch all the products. So there's our newly added product. Now let's go and add another request. This request is gonna go to API products by name, and then we have to add the question mark, and the query request parameter name is product name. So we say product name equals, and let's add something that we don't have in the DB, like let's say test 1 2 3 4. We don't have a product with that name. We should get the 404 back, and yes, we are getting the 404 back, so that's good. Now let's add this one. Let's add this name, the one that we have in the DB, and I click send, and as you can see, the query is getting executed to the DB, and we are actually getting that product right here that has that name. So our actually custom query is getting executed successfully towards the DB, and it's getting our product entity. Now there's a bunch of things of how to of what you can do with those methods. So it's a quite a powerful thing actually. There's a bunch of things you can do, comparisons, you can do a lot of checks, and a lot more complex queries with the method namings. Now let's do the thing that I said previously, where we would maybe want to return a list. So let's return a list of product entities. I'm gonna say a list. This is gonna return a list, and I'm gonna say find all by name. So it's gonna return all that have that name. And then okay, that's fine. I guess it wasn't updated. What I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna come here and I'm gonna have another method like this. I'm gonna copy it, but instead of returning one product, I'm gonna return a list of products. And I'm gonna say find all by name in this case. And this is here we're gonna return. Now we're not gonna use this, so this is gonna change a little bit. We're gonna try to find by name here. Now if we're gonna have to use our different one, so find all by name, and now we're gonna have to change also this variable to be a list of product entity. So that's changed, and now we have to map this list into a list of products. So this is not gonna be valid anymore. So what I would do is I would just do that. That's not going to be optional, so that's going to be products in this case. Let me just say it like that. And now let's map it so we have an actual list of products. So I'm going to say products.stream.map, and I want to map each product entity to a new product, and then product entity.getID, product entity.getName, and product entity.getDescription. Just like that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this. So basically I'm going to save this to a new list, but let me just collect it first to list. And then I'm going to create a variable, introduce a local variable, response list. I'm going to name it. Let me format this a little better right now, so it's a little more readable. Let me just format this slightly better so you can see it a little more easier. And just like that, we're having a response list of products that we can actually directly return here. And this is going to suggest that it can be inline. So I'm going to say, okay, yes, you can inline it. And I don't know why I didn't inline it. Sometimes it doesn't want to do it. But okay, let's keep it like this for now. Let's keep it like this. So basically, now we can go ahead in our controller and we can create another route. Let's say another get mapping. But this time we're gonna be returning response entity of a list of products. So a list of products, get all by name, I'm gonna say. And we're again gonna have probably this query parameter right over there, just like that. And I'm gonna have another route here, and the route's gonna be all by name this time. So this time we're gonna have it a little different, so it's gonna be all by name. And the implementation is gonna be pretty simple. So basically, what do we want to do? We want to do return. We want to call the service. We want to find all by name. So find all by name, and we're passing the product name. And obviously this is not going to work like this. We have to do a response entity.ok and wrap it in a response entity. And just like that, we've implemented a find all by name, but let's see if it works. So in order to test this out, I'm going to restart the application right now. And I'm going to go into Postman, and I'm going to add another product with the same name. So I'm going to go ahead here, and I'm going to add another product with the same name. I'm going to click send. It's going to get created. We're going to list. Let's see. So as you can see, we got two products with the same name, test name. ID3, ID4, and let's create another GET request right over here. The mapping is all by name, and we have to include it as a query param, the product name, to equal test name in this case. Click enter, and as you can see, we are getting back those two products that have that name. So those two products are matching the criteria of the same name, and because they're matching that criteria, they're getting returned back by the JPA query. If I were to put a name that we don't have, we should just get an empty list back, and that's exactly what's happening. And if I put back the name that we actually do have twice, we get those two results back. So that's kinda how do we implement our own custom JPA method queries using only the method name. So we're just specifying a method name, and that in the background generates an implementation for us, and it gets executed. So it generates an SQL query that gets executed to the DB. So that's going to be it for this video.